Hey, folks, back for my second part of my interview with the amazing Geoff Thompson. Geoff laid out everything of his background, about the betrayal that he had growing up, the rage that he had, how he let the rage, kind of dominate him, and then he found a focus for it. And now we're going to get into more of, that lifestyle and the price of that lifestyle. I think it's very important because most people don't talk about this aspect of violence. What are the costs of violence? What are the costs to doing this? Especially those of you, some of the younger guys that are always thinking about going to be bouncers or anything like this. There's a lot to think about when you go to do this kind of work because it will stick with you years later. And I think Geoff has some really great insights for you. So again, just for those, I mean, Geoff is somebody who is prolific. He's written over 50 books, and you know, one of the first ones I read was Dead or Alive, but I've read many of Geoff's texts since then. But that side of him is still very valid. Most hardcore guys I know in the UK just absolutely respect Geoff because of the time he put in and when he put it in. That's the other important time. The time frame that he did this work was when it basically was, just open season. And the police pretty much let them patrol themselves and use violence in a very aggressive manner to control things. So there's a lot to be learned from this. So welcome to part 2 of my interview with Geoff Thompson. It's so funny you're saying that because, listen, I love it. Now, I live in Vegas. A lot of my friends are some of the big competitors. I love martial arts, but there's this mantra that people say all the time that all fights go to the ground. What they don't understand is that not only the other thing that happens on the ground is that's where the majority of the deaths and grievous bodily injury happen because of the stomping, the kicking and everything. And anybody stabbing and anybody that understands group dynamics like that in a real environment, outside of the ring, that's one of the most dangerous things that can happen to you. Not because it's a bad skill set to have. It's just
a great skill set. It's a great support system.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. But you would never go to the ground because you always presume that the person you're fighting is carrying, he's got a weapon, because he usually has. And you always presume that he's either with somebody else.
Yes.
So there's 2 or 3 of them or more. Or that I've ended up on the ground by mistake because I've made a mistake. Yeah. And strangers have walked past and kicked me.
Yes.
One of my best friends, who was a fabulous fighter, made a mistake, ended up on the floor, and he got his teeth kicked out by somebody that was just walking past, and thought, "Oh, there's 2 people on the floor. The one on top is the aggressor." Kicked his teeth out, broke his jaw. So you always presume you're fighting more than one. So you never go to the floor. The great thing about the grappling for me was it gave me a massive confidence in that if I made a mistake, and I ended up in a grapple, I knew what I was doing. I knew the territory. And I spent 18 months full time with Neil Adams in an international class. Wow. I understand the area, but we never went to the floor. In all the hundreds of fights I had, I think I probably went to the floor maybe once or twice, and that was by mistake.
Right.
And when I fell, I felt absolute terror because I knew the moments I went to the floor, I could be stamped on. Or stabbed. And I saw lots of friends when they went to the floor stabbed by women with pointed combs, with hairpins, with little stiletto knives. I saw them glassed because they went to the floor. So we never went to the floor, and we never ever encouraged kicking either, because the moment you took 1 foot off the floor, you were impaired. Because, like I said, you're dealing with people, you're dealing in with very, very enclosed environments, unsteady terrain, broken glass all over the place, beer spilt everywhere. And you would find that if you lifted your leg up to kick, you would automatically just be rushed. And then you're not rushed by 1 person, you're rushed by 10. But when I say they stamp on your head, I mean they jump on your head. It isn't like I'm just going to kick this guy in the face. You'd be lucky to get up and still be alive. You'd be lucky not to die. So the environment, this isn't a personal thing where I go, this is a good art, this is a bad art. I love all the arts. The environment tells you immediately. you do this at your own risk. You don't go to the floor. You don't pick your foot up to kick. You work so close to the person that's the only range you've got. You work so close that if you do throw a punch, it's so close and so dynamic and so explosive and so preemptive that often the guy just falls down unconscious and people don't know who's hit him.
Right.
You know, because the range is so short, and you obviously you trained for that one punch kill. So the environment teaches you this immediately. It teaches you a lot more. I mean, you know, if I only learned how to knock people out preemptively and the dangers of the other ranges, I would have come out of it quite poor. What I learned was that, and it's took me 30 years to unpick this, it was the greatest metaphysical experience of my life, and I'm still involved in it now. I wasn't protecting the doorway to a nightclub. I was protecting the doorway to my heart, or the doorway to my will. The will is the working arm of the soul, the will and the intellect. And if our will is captured by fear, by anxiety, you know, by ignorance, then that will is taken off us, our autonomy is lost, and we're trampled. So the door taught me that I wasn't protecting the doorway to a club. I was protecting the doorway to my own will. I was learning to control my endocrine system. I was learning to control the endocrine system of the people around me. I learned to see the signs and the tics of people that were pre-violent. I learned to see the posturers who would stand back and threaten everything. And I learned the people that were really dangerous who said very little and moved close. I learned the pre-fight twitches of people who were about to attack, how they fall into monosyllables, how they start to use natural mudras, like to bring their arms out, like to try and show you that they've got no weapons and they want to get closer to you. So I started to understand the language of violence and started to understand how to preempt it. But more than anything else, the thing I learned was, and this took me a while, was that every monster that I faced on the nightclub door was a projection from something in me. I'm not talking metaphorically, I'm talking literally. I literally, you know, there's something in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It says, if you see monsters presenting themselves, don't be fooled. They are only projections of your own mind. And if you see that, you'll be able to dissolve them. If you don't see it, you'll be incarnated into a place of, they call it the hell world, a place of fear. So I recognized that I projected these people. I literally created the infrastructure, the monsters. I'd created it unconsciously, I'd forgotten I'd created it, and then I was developing techniques to fight the very monsters I'd created and forgotten. I was so inspired by how powerful that was. So with my damaged psyche, with my belief that no one could be trusted, that the world was violent, I entered what the Tibetan Buddhists would call the hell realm. So Buster's nightclub was the hell realm, literally. I mean, it was like Sodom and Gomorrah with a bit of Pompeii brothel thrown in for good measure. Right. It was exciting, it was exhilarating, it was violent, it was colourful, but there was every passion there. Every temptation tried to draw you deeper and deeper into that world. And I recognized that I created that. And the proof of that, Tim, was when I saw it and left the physical realm and started to go into the Buddho. I stopped engaging negative thoughts. I exercised the parasites that were living in me. And I watched all of the infrastructure that I built dissolve, literally. The nightclubs got knocked down over a period of years. Some of them are houses. One of them's the hairdressers. No good to me, of course. No hairdressers, no good to me. Some of them are just completely demolished. They're not there anymore. And the monsters, they're not in my life. I'm sitting now looking at acres and acres and acres of field in front of me. I'm living in a cottage where in Stratford, close to where the Bard was born, Shakespeare. So I've changed that by changing my perceptions, by changing my beliefs, by changing my concepts, by challenging the precepts, you know, the rules, by recognizing that I create, I maintain, and I dissolve my own reality, literally. So I created this reality with my beliefs. when I challenged those beliefs and dissolved those beliefs or converted those beliefs, that whole infrastructure dissolved. And as that dissolved, and I started to, you know, I'm an autodidact, so I started to self-educate. I started to study philosophy, psychology, physiology, sociology. I started to study the, you know, the great writers like Dante and Milton and Blake and people like that, you know, the visionaries. And I looked at them and thought, well, this is incredibly visionary writing. Where's this come from? Of course, they were all referencing the Bibles, the Old Testament, you know, the Hindu scriptures. So I started to dive into there and look at the arcana there. And everything I read over the next 20 years confirmed what I'd found on a nightclub door in Coventry. But I'd created that reality with my beliefs, and I'd dissolved it with the same process reversed. But in order to dissolve the beliefs, I had to do exactly what I did with my fear pyramid in that sweaty bedroom in Coventry when I turned into my fears and I intercourse with them. I entangled so deeply with them that I went beyond the surface wave of the fear and hit the ground of being. So I went beyond it. I went beyond conception. I went beyond denotation. I went beyond all of that. I just went straight into the and in that place it didn't exist. So what I learned on the doors about the immediacy of violence, what works, what doesn't work, the fact that it's not moral or ethical, it's just literally, this is the environment, this is what works. I did that for a little while, and after knocking out, you know, more people than I can count, and watching them hit the floor and watching their girlfriends scream and watching, you know, blood coming out the head and watching their teeth shatter. I found a tooth stuck in my sock once where I kicked it out of someone's head. And these were all monsters. Right. But then one day I was walking through the Coventry city centre and I saw one of the monsters that I'd destroyed the night before. I destroyed him. And I saw him and he was walking through the town and he was pushing a pram. A baby pram, and he got a daughter holding one bar and a daughter holding the other bar, and his wife behind him, distraught, trying to take into her mind the, you know, the devastation of what I've done to his face. And fucking hell, I just thought, where's the monster gone? He wasn't a monster, Tim. He was a factory worker. He was a daddy. He was a husband. He was a son. Now, I'm not saying he wasn't dangerous the night before, but he definitely wasn't a monster. And if I'd got the skill I'd got now, not only would I have been able to deal with it non-violently, it wouldn't have even occurred. I would have never let it happen. So I started to go beyond what I'd been taught. I started to go beyond this parasite that had been placed in me. This parasite was like what Eckhart Tolle would call a semi-autonomous thought form that feeds off the human suffering of other people. He calls it a pain body. And he says pain bodies feed off pain bodies. Pain bodies feed off pain. They feed off misery. We think we're the top of the food chain. We're not. There are energies that feed off us. They place little parasites inside us, little demons. And then there's a mothership that feeds off that, gets people to interact with each other, gets them to be violent with each other, gets them to filled with discourse, filled with anger, and it feeds off the essence of human misery. This isn't personal either. This is just what the environment has taught me. If I walk across the field over there and a little bug jumps on my leg and starts to suck the blood from my leg, it's not personal. He's just doing what he does. And these energies are no different. It's not personal. They're just feeding off spilling essence, and there is a lot of it. So once I started to recognize this and started to go into the not just the philosophy and the Bibles, but the exegesis of the Bibles, you know, the explanation of the Bibles, going into the deep esoterica, you know, what we would call in martial arts the Budo. This is where Kano ended up. This is where Funakoshi ended up. This is where Ueshiba ended up. This is where Masashi existed, you know, exactly the same place. He said the same as what I'd found. You know, most of his victories were accidental, because he said he saw a lot of legends die He'd survived, and he wanted to go beyond that and find something bigger. He wanted to find the source of it. So he started to train with a Buddhist monk and started to go deeply into meditation because he saw the limitations of the physical realm. So yeah, so the door taught, I started to teach what I'd learned about managing fear, about understanding the endocrine system, about how to switch it on, how to switch it off, how to trigger it, how to slow it down, how to climb inside other people with the use of mudras, with the use of shapes, with the use of sound, Kota Dharma Gaku, the use of magic sound. So I could say the right thing to a person and climb inside him and switch his adrenaline on and give him enough fear to trigger the flight response that he runs away. I could climb inside somebody with the use of Heka or Kota Dharma Gaku, and I could lift him out of his body, transfer him to 24 hours time, place him in his factory the next day, or in his home, and show him what the consequences of dealing with me in that moment would be. So I'd say to him, you know, this is my workplace you've come to. This is my front room. So you think you can fuck with me? You think you can come here and fuck with me? He said, but tomorrow I'm going to find out where you work. I'm going to find out where you live. And I'm going to knock on your door when you're having tea with your mum. This sounds like words, but it's just the use of deliberate, intensive sound. So I say, okay, so if you want to kick off here, be prepared because I'm going to be in your life tomorrow. So this person was transferred to the future, yanked back to his body, and would step away because that's not what he wants. Right. And he doesn't want it because he's not a monster. He's a factory worker. You know? He's not a monster. He's someone's dad. He's someone's husband. So we started again. I didn't know I was practicing Kota Dharma Gaku until I bumped into Ushaba 20 years later. But I saw the power of sound. I saw how I could defeat people with sound. Then later, when I went more into the Budo, became less of a martial artist and more of a mystic, a martial mystic. I started to use sound in the way I'm using it now, as a healing balm, as an intercessor or as a comforter. So I could use sound and mudras and touch to heal people or to direct people or to enter their life. Like somebody will be watching this now and be looking at me and go, this guy is speaking to me and I can change. They might be saying, I've just come back from war and I've killed people. There's no hope for me. And I can say to them, there is hope for you. There is hope for you. In fact, the bigger the sinner, if you're going to go into the Budo, the bigger the welcome. Right. And I can say to them, with the use of sound, I can say, look at St. Paul, murderer turned saint. Look at Milarepa, Buddhist murderer turned saint. Look at Angulimala, killed 99 people, became a saint in one lifetime. Look at St. Augustine. These are some of the greatest voices in esoterica. St. Augustine literally did a book called Confessions to show what a deviant he was before he found Buddha. So you can talk to people and just use sound and just say, this is where you are. This is, you're in a point of crisis. But crisis in the Tibetan Book of Dead, they would call crisis the bardo. It's the place in between states. And that's the only place where you can transcend. So if someone's out there watching this now and they are in a crisis, they are in the perfect place to transcend, the perfect place. Because it's only when we fall into crisis, only when when they call it the falling, it's only when we have a falling that we start to really question what we're doing. And this is what they talk about when you wake up. You suddenly go, I'm in this body. I'm looking out of these eyes. This is my kingdom. I'm not in charge of it. It's overrun by addictions, by concepts, by precepts, by beliefs, by pornographies. It's overrun. I need to win it back. This is Odysseus coming back from the Trojan Wars, Tim, to his kingdom in Ithaca, only to find it overrun by vagabonds. Even his wife and his servants don't recognize him in his own kingdom. And he has to go back in and win his kingdom back. This is just an allegory of waking up. So if somebody's out there now, they're in a crisis, this isn't the worst time of your life. as painful as it is, this is the best time of your life, because now you can leave this interview and pick up a book or follow a podcast or really, really just have a good look at where you are in your life and ask yourself, is this how I want to live? I looked at my own life and thought, do I really want to live with weapons in every room, with the baseball bat by the door, with the baseball bat in my car, with the constant threat of repercussions, with the constant threat of being arrested and going to prison, with the constant threat of dying, with the constant threat of that violence spilling over onto my wife and my kids, because I can be out in the town and, some guy I beat up, 10 years ago recognizes me, and for him, it was yesterday. Right. And, my wife and kids can be in the middle of all that. So it's an exciting time to start really looking at, what do I want to do? If I can create all that infrastructure and all those monsters just with the wrong thinking, what could I achieve if I found homeostasis, if I found balance? What could I do if I got my thinking right? The people like us, when we've had a lifetime of being around violence, and some of the kids listening to this who have been at war, I would imagine, in America, because of all the sorts of conflicts they've been in, these people have more potential for spiritual ascension than a normal person who lives a normal life and doesn't make any mistakes or commit any sins. We have tremendous potential to transcend, because we've got so much, we're like rockets. We've got so much fuel in us. All of that dark energy that's trapped in the plumbing, that's that's oil for the fire. That's the burnt offering that will be consumed in the volition of going out and living an extraordinary life. So it's I'm still unfolding what the door taught me, but at the very least, it gave me a truth, and this truth I learned in a little tiny anonymous nightclub in Coventry, and a tiny little gym where it's just like a sports hall, where it was just me and my private students, and the truth was so potent that it rippled right across the world, until eventually I was invited to Las Vegas by Chuck Norris to come and teach for his 500 black belts, and because he wanted me to teach preemption. He wanted me to teach about managing fear, he recognized what truth was. Right. And the books have gone into multiple languages around the world, and that message that was taught to me by the environment has spread out across the world. I mean, in fact, I'm still getting letters and emails from people now, even though I've moved away from that. I'm still doing it, just in a different way. Right. I'm still doing my fear pyramid, but it's an internal climb, not an external climb. So, and I do at some point intend to do a book about the metaphysical experiences of a nightclub bouncer, because there's a lot more that not just that I haven't said, but there's a lot more that I haven't uncovered yet, because I've written about it fleetingly in my book. I've just done a book called Notes from a Factory Floor about this transition, and I did a book called The Divine CEO, which is all about spiritual ascension. In our world, it would just be called Budo. It would just be about Budo, and Budo basically means without arms. Right. So we get rid of the armor, we start to work metaphysically. We stop having fisticuffs outside the chip shop on a Friday night or outside the pizza place on a Friday night, and we start defeating people without physical actions, with the use of sound, with the use of mudras. Mudras are just shapes we make with our hands, and also with massive preemption, which is if the concept isn't in my head, then it can't appear in front of me. I'm invisible to it. If I'm centered, if I'm in my singularity, if I've located the self in the Dantian and I can sit there, I am invisible to threat, completely invisible to it. It's only when I fall out of alignment and I fall back into the world that I'm seen again. So I think it's an exciting time of learning for all the kids out there who may have been like us and kind of really are really spilling out of, you know, the physical realm and thinking, well, I want something more. I want something more sating. This is a good time to start exploring people like Ushaba, people like Masashi, you know, people that have been there.
Okay, folks, that's it for that segment of the interview. Hope you're enjoying this multi-part series. We'll be posting more content soon. And until then, please remember, go to surviveviolence.com, give us your email address, get your free masterclass. Make sure that you join this channel. You know, the Tim Larkin channel is growing really fast, but I need your help. So not only subscribe to the channel, hit the notifications, but more importantly, share it with your folks. Let them see one video that particularly got to you. That would really, really help us as we are growing the channel. Until next time, all the best.